That looks better. That looks better. All right, there we go. Now we're ready to rock and roll. Hi, gang. Here's your Wednesday poll question at Smerconish.com. Love this one. I love this one. Michael, you always say that. No, I actually don't always say that. Is it better for the National Democratic Party, think Dems nationally, if Zoran Mamdani wins or loses in the New York City mayoral race? That is today's poll question at Smerconish.com. Thank you to my friends at Parks Casino. Parks Casino in Shippensburg, as a matter of fact, because good fall vibes. Actually, it's a great time to check out the foliage in South Central Pennsylvania by driving to Parks Casino in Shippensburg. Exit 29 off Route 81, 45 minutes from the state capitol in Harrisburg, so close to Hagerstown, Maryland, Martinsburg, West Virginia, the nearby Pennsylvania towns of Chambersburg, Carlisle, Greencastle. They've got Parks Casino Fall Comedy every Friday night at 8 p.m. Good chance to mingle in Shippensburg. This Friday, comedian Pat House headlines with special guest, lawyer by day, comedian by night, Karen Kunick. I love that. Parks Casino Shippensburg celebrating military veterans every Monday. Every Tuesday, it's Parks Casino's 50% golden discount, plus live music on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. at the Liberty Bar and the Grill at Parks Casino in Shippensburg. Have some fun. Do some mingling in Shippensburg. Check out the foliage. Visit parkscasino.com. You got to be 21. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Tuesday poll results at Smerconish.com. Is it time to settle the Russia-Ukraine conflict by accepting the present territorial positions as permanent? 34,495 cast ballots, 83.62%. 8 in 10 said no, do not settle along these boundary lines. By the way, the Budapest summit between Putin and Trump apparently now not going to take place, or at least delayed. So some recalibration taking place in terms of the relationship between the two. I said yesterday, I don't like it, but I don't know what the alternative is. I find it hard to believe that in any scenario, even the Tomahawk, fully militarized Ukraine scenario, I find it hard to believe that that land, which Putin has claimed as a spoil of war, is ever going to go back to Ukraine. And I sure hope that I'm wrong about that. I sure hope that I'm wrong. I'd love Russia out of everything, including Crimea. But if I'm right, then maybe we should get to it sooner. And just because it's President Trump who says, let's resolve it now along, as I describe it, the musical chairs borders, just because it's his idea doesn't necessarily mean that it's the wrong answer. Wednesday poll question. Think about this. 2 weeks from today, New Yorkers, the nation, but New Yorkers in particular, wake up perhaps to Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani. And if in fact that happens, is that a good thing for Democrats nationally? Is it a good thing for Democrats nationally, or is it a bad thing for Democrats nationally? I mean, the very short answer is to say, well, it's a good thing if he wins because it's going to invigorate young progressive Democrats. It's going to showcase a platform that resonates with voters that they need to reach. It might inspire other progressive candidates who could similarly, upset the old order. That's what Andrew Cuomo represents in this case. It'll open the door for more like him. On the other hand, you could say it'll reinforce if he loses, it'll reinforce the importance of centrist candidates. And it gets me into a subject that we were talking about yesterday, this really, really amazing New York Times analysis of who wins in congressional districts that are up for grabs. And there aren't many of them. Moderates. There are several things that I've read today that are relevant to this conversation. The first of them is in the newsletter today. It's the New York Post editorial from yesterday telling Curtis Sliwa, you got to get out. Swallow the bitter pill, Curtis Sliwa. Quit the race to stop Zoran Mamdani. It says this: it burns us to write this, But it's time for Curtis Sliwa to face reality and admit that the city's best hope to avoid the disaster of Zoran Mamdani is for him to drop out of the race. And then they show him a little love, and then they don't. They say, Sliwa has worked hard in this run, getting well briefed on all the issues, showing up every day all over the city, and even setting aside his proud red beret. But he is an oddball with a sometimes shady past and zero experience relevant to running the behemoth that is the city government, yet the GOP's county bosses lined up firmly behind him. Curtis, you got to get out of the race. Otherwise, Zoran Mamdani is going to be elected. Item number 2 that I found of interest, a Bret Stephens column in the print edition of today's New York Times, pointing out that 38% of Jewish New Yorkers will be voting for Zoran Mamdani, according to the polls. 42% will be voting for Andrew Cuomo, 13% for Curtis Sliwa, and then Bret Stephens makes the case as to why Mamdani should not be. Why Mamdani, I'll go with the headline, frightens Jews like me, writes Bret Stephens. He makes 3 arguments. They go back in time as far as Mamdani's undergraduate days at Bowdoin College, where he helped found the campus chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine. He broke off collaboration with the student arm of the left-wing Jewish group J Street. I like J Street, which supports Palestinian statehood, opposes Israeli settlements, and is roundly critical of the Israeli government. One of the points that he makes, that's the first of 3, is his association on a college campus. I don't hold that against Zoran Mamdani. You might, but I don't. But this, I think, is relevant. Bret Stephens, why right after October 7 could he do no better than to issue a mealy-mouthed acknowledgement that Jews had died the day before? Why couldn't he even denounce the perpetrators of the most murderous anti-Semitic rampage in the past 80 years? That's a really good question. Which brings me to the New York Times of yesterday, this analysis of the American Center. And what the Times did, they opened up with these 4 charts, and they showed in the first of them, here are all the races that are somewhat close for the House of Representatives, or were in the last cycle. And they've got like 50 dots on a grid. Of 435, it's only like 50 or so that were somewhat competitive. Slide 2, they point out that in most, the winner of the congressional race comes from the same party as the presidential candidate who won that district. And then third slide, they show here are the exceptions. 16 candidates, Democrats who won in a district where Trump carried, Republicans who won in a district that Harris carried. And what is it that the 16 have in common? According to the New York Times, they are all moderates. They are all moderates. In most congressional districts, the winner comes from the same party that won the district in the presidential race, but in these exceptions, it's always the moderate that wins. And the Times goes on to make a case for persuasion still being relevant in an era when many think that it's all about motivation. The Times says, no, not so fast. And why? And this is a paragraph that I want to read to you that so well describes me and may well describe you. The New York Times argues that America still has a political center. Polls show that most voters prefer capitalism to socialism, check. Worry the government is too big, check. Think that corporations and the wealthy have too much power, check, check. Most voters oppose both the cruel immigration enforcement of the Trump administration and the lax Biden policies that led to a record immigration surge, true. Most favor robust policing to combat crime and recoil at police brutality, right. Most favor widespread abortion access and some restrictions in late pregnancy. Most oppose race-based affirmative action and support class-based affirmative action. Most support job protections for trans people and believe that trans girls shouldn't play girls' sports. Most want strong public schools and the flexibility to choose which school their children attend. The point is, I check every one of those boxes. Maybe you do too, but Democrats have not been able to capitalize on Donald Trump's presidency. They've not been able to come up thus far with their voice against him. Why? The New York Times, I mean, coming from this source, I think it means something, say because Democrats lack credibility. And why do they lack credibility? Because they're perceived as being too liberal, too judgmental, and too focused on cultural issues. And no, argues the Times, in case you're thinking, well, but focus on the economic issues and you can offset that. They say, no, that's not enough to do it. You can't point. Think about this. You can't point to a single member of Congress or governor from a swing district or state who has been able to pursue that strategy and win, be on the wrong side of the cultural issues, stress the economic, and win. And if you're thinking, and now I'm going to circle back to the poll question of the day, if you're thinking of Zoran Mamdani, well, look at Mamdani. You know, he upset Cuomo in the Democratic primary and now stands poised to win. Look at Bernie. Look at AOC. Aren't these three progressive champions running contrary to what the New York Times is arguing in this editorial? No, they're not, because they win on very narrow blue turf. And there's not a single similar progressive who represents a swing district or state. And if you're looking for a role model in all of this, then maybe you ought to be looking at somebody who was on yesterday's radio program. Listen to that book club podcast, Senator Joe Manchin. You know, Manchin, who won a state where other Democrats often lost by 40 points and then provided crucial votes for major Democratic legislation. And even though he did, he was a heretic in the eyes of many Democrats. So that is the New York Times analysis, which says, hey, Democrats, we here at the Times, we think Trump is a threat to democracy, but you're blowing it, and you need to get back to the center. One more consideration that I will hit you with, because I think it's also interesting, and that is the Wall Street Journal lead editorial. Zoran Mamdani and the Democrats, they say the socialist insurgency is going to keep growing unless the party center stops it. Okay, that sounds a lot like the New York Times that I just shared with you. But what's different is the Wall Street Journal says the biggest risk of a socialist takeover of the Democratic Party is that sooner or later, the party is going to retake the White House, as inevitably as there will be a recession or voters will simply tire of the incumbents. Remember how Jonathan Chait and other left-wingers hoped the GOP would nominate Mr. Trump in 2016 because he'd be easy to beat? You know, they were wrong about that. Many of us were. The country needs a sane and centrist Democratic Party as an alternative to the GOP in the post-Trump era. So the Journal says, like the Times argues, Democrats, you're not going to be successful with this strategy nationally. The Journal is more nuanced. The Journal says this is not good for the country if Mamdani wins because, you know, just the nature of things, Dems are going to get back in control of the White House. And maybe it will be a Mamdani-influenced party. And then the whole country is going to have to live with a Democratic socialist as a president. It's a fun poll question. Is it better for the National Democratic Party if Mamdani wins or loses? You could argue that it's better for the Democratic Party because it'll be new blood and new vitality for a party that is too old, too much the party of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, and needs to be more the part of Zoran Mamdani and AOC. Or you say, if he wins in New York City, people will be given false hope that that's the direction, the successful direction of the party, when in fact the opposite is true. I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see how you come out on this. I'm going to talk about it on radio today, entertain all of your telephone calls, and we'll have some fun. Gang, go vote at Smerconish.com. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Set yourself up for notifications. Episode 5 of The Mingle Project drops tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Aiden Walker is my guest. He's terrific. 26-year-old guy who schools me on the world of memes and has a different take on social media than I have offered. And I think you're really going to enjoy that conversation. There's a trailer for it in today's newsletter to whet your appetite and to tell you more about Aiden. So please get ready for episode 5 of The Mingle Project, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'd love it if you're there at 8. Watch it at your leisure. Watch it thereafter, which is what many do, but it's quality stuff. Okay? Have a great day. See you on radio soon.